following ratification of the treaties, I think late last year. So, how do we position and promote Uganda? Recently, I have nephews who were born in the USA. I struggled to convince them that we have more mounted gorillas in Uganda than another country. But now they wanted to go to another country, which I'll ask Joe Walker to name later. But now, my nephew told his friend, some are actually from Japan, that, you know, my uncle doesn't lie. So guys, let's give it a try, eh? So when they came back, they said, but you should be making some noise about this. So we need to make some noise about all these vast endowments that God gave us as a country. Ourselves, with yourselves, how do we attract more tourists? Because as we know, tourism is very sensitive to perceptions. And now for you friends from the mainstream media, because your stories come with quality control, what we call gatekeeping, isn't it? So a story that goes out in the mainstream is much more believable. And that comes with a lot of responsibility. That's what I wanted to emphasize. Before that story goes out, do you think it adds value to the country as a patriot, as a national? Because now we are competing for investment with other countries, isn't it? Someone can invest in a neighboring country but still sell items in Uganda under the ESC Treaty, COMESA, but that means we have lost jobs as a country. We are a young country, a lot of young people looking for jobs and opportunities. So, the way we are managing content, the news, the agenda setting, the press, the media as a mirror of society, what are we mirroring to, if there's such a word, what are we mirroring about Uganda and what Uganda has to offer? That is for us to reflect over. Investment, tourism, because now, due to convergence, all media virtually are in the digital space. I remember, like, when bombs went off next to our office, in fact, some glasses were shattered there. Within 3 minutes, my niece, who studies in Netherlands, asked me, "Are you okay, uncle?" Actually, me, I didn't know what had happened because my office is the other side. I asked Hassan, he's not here, because I thought there had been a tire burst. In fact, someone told me it's a car seems to have burst a tire. But I said, what kind of car is that, which produces that level of sound? Then another one went off. The short of it, within 2-3 minutes, the world knew what had happened there. And from what I also know, people do some basic searches about a country. So I don't know. Even now, if you enter Uganda, I don't know what you see. But that you see is an aggregation of the content that goes out about Uganda, including through your media platforms. So anything that goes out, just to know, it's going to add on our digital footprint as a country out there. And those are some of the things people quickly look at to decide whether to visit Uganda as a tourist, whether to invest in Uganda, like my good friend there said, the perception shaping. So there you are, our good friends Avanene from the media. That is the sum total or the net effect of that activity about our country. So, so we are here to reflect and compare notes and see what we can do to further ensure that our country is portrayed well, so we attract more investment. Did you know, for example, I'm sure a lot of you do, our trade deficit is now $4.8 billion. If you offset the value of our exports against imports, our trade deficit Sarah, you might correct me if I'm wrong, but it's about $4.8 billion. That's why the president keeps saying we are donating jobs. If we attract more investment and manufacture from here, then we cut. One, we are growing our GDP. We are also creating more goods and services to sell, but we are substituting some of the goods and services that that we import. In which case, even the value of our shilling strengthens. We create more jobs, but we also reduce the trade deficit. We collect more revenue because these enterprises do pay tax. As you know, we are not doing very well with the tax performance. There's the collection, but even the tax base, we need to further expand it. Sarah is from PSFU. I know there are a lot of things they are doing. So every person who invests here is adding to the expansion of our tax base and our GDP. So that story that goes out, does it promote investment? We need to reflect on every tourist who comes here spends money here. In fact, even the smallest people on the streets, sometimes I pass by Uganda Road, there's a big market there for Ugandan wear, these African shirts. People who sell ornaments. It's not only the hotels, even people who sell food. I was talking to Amos Wekesa. I actually thought he would be here. He told me about some of the cancellations of bookings that he had to live with. Do you remember the story about that water in Kampala is infested with fecal material? Do you remember that story? So these guys are like, oh, wait a minute. If I'm coming to Uganda, I'm going to consume water. And this is Kampala. It's the capital city. So if I'm drinking fecal material in Kampala, what about up country? What might I not consume? I wish he was here, but he told me he had to do some refunds because of those. You remember the stories of aflatoxin in our food items and the blocking of some of like our milk by Sarah. I think it was South Sudan as well, and Kenya. Aflatoxin in Ugandan, food items. There was a time actually. Now people are looking for beef which had flies. You remember that it's called formalin? I think about 3 years ago. That beef in Kampala is preserved using formalin. You know what formalin is used for? So people were fearing to buy beef without flies on it because they thought it had formalin. Instead, they were buying probably not good beef, but with flies because then they believe it has no formalin. But remember, we are in one market. We export beef to many countries in the neighboring region. How does that help us? Maybe it's another story of is it the man biting the dog? But I also know Sarah here and our friends from Pasaid, Audrey and the team, they are doing a lot of work to promote our exports. But if we have stories like these, do they add to or do they constrain their efforts? There was also a story of human organs at a restaurant, moreover opposite CPS. So the question is, if food is being served, Ndugonyango is here. Ndugonyango, if a restaurant opposite CPS is selling food with a human organ in it, what about a restaurant in Soroti? And the funny people where I come from were saying, so was that organ circumcised or? But Ndugonyango, actually, sometimes it is you guys who issue the statements. Because I talked to some media people and they say the statement originated from the police. So in other words, that's why we are here. Even ourselves, we want to have a candid conversation and see how we can, address some of these issues progressively. Transformer oil, human organs, aflatoxin. I wouldn't want to go to a place where I think I'm going to eat a human organ. Certainly not. And then, for tourists, you have Tanzania, you have Serengeti, you have Kenya, you have all these countries in the region. So, what can we do as government and as media to and moreover, like I've said, these stories spread like a wildfire across the world, now aided by technology, digital uptake, deepening and penetration, access to ICT devices. It's very easy. And more so, the mainstream media. If those stories were posted by, who are some of the notorious people on digital? If they were posted by one of those people who has no address, physical address, who is not affiliated to a media house, they wouldn't do as much damage as a story that has gone out in a mainstream media platform. Because there, the assumption is that there's adequate gatekeeping and quality control. So we can't quantify the damage, but certainly I think you would agree with me that the damage is much greater. So, so we are saying today, how do we strike the balance? Like I said, there are issues coming from cabinet and the presidency. The minister will touch on them. But as partners, as patriots, how do we drive an agenda that builds our country for all the immense power that the media wields? How do we harness it to build the country with the focus in some of these areas that I've listed? Investment, tourism, creating opportunities for our people. And as we do that, we also do create opportunities for ourselves, and then we relish in a country that works for all of us. Okay? So friends, that is the gist of our interaction. We are going to have many more with the minister. There are those we also do up country. And my suggestion is that let's be open, let's be candid, especially now that the minister is coming. Maybe some of the things are policy related. Cabinet is responsible for policy. We do work with them. We are the guys in the kitchen, but it's not our function to make policy, us the technical people. We work on policy, on directive and the supervision from cabinet. So there are things the minister himself will raise, but we are happy to have you. So let's make the most of this time we have here. The PS will be here. I have combined my submission with hers. So when she comes, I'll give her a debriefing. So I want to thank you, welcome you, thank you. Please, thanks for giving us your time. And be free. Our ministers are very good. They're very good. You know them. I know a lot of you have interacted with them. They're friends from government here. So I'm wishing us a good day. I just have a message that the minister might be coming in. So let me end here and encourage you to share with us as we also share. I believe then we can learn together and collectively become better communicators, but also better citizens of our country. I thank you again for listening to me. Thank you for being a good MC.
A round of applause for me, please. And a bigger round of applause for Commissioner Wataza. He has at least given us a picture. I think about the pineapples, the Ugandan pineapples, and I'm like, why isn't it breaking the news? And I'm wondering, I think about the story. Some stories have really getting us to start cooking our own food because of how they're presented in the media. We will not be stepping in restaurants because of of perceptions. So again, perceptions can make or break a country. So while he was here, he was speaking that, do a quick Google search on Uganda and see what is there. So I need some quick searchers. Oh, wow, Jesse.
The story at the top. Goods worth shillings 1 billion stuck in Mombasa after Ugandan buyer disappears. But the others are not so bad. There is Uganda, Tanzania fresh produce volume via Mombasa on the rise. That's a good story by the East African. The other one was by the Daily Monitor. Then we have another one, what the ambitious budget means for Ugandans. Then we have Uganda, Sweden discuss humanitarian challenges. So I think the algorithms are not so bad now. America rejects Uganda's plea to return to AGOA trade deal. Chimp reports. Then we have, will UN panel of experts report poison Uganda, DRC relations? Then Kenya tax riot surprise Ugandans. So there's quite a lot of stories out there. If you Googled Uganda, it's a mix of things, and yet ideally we want to portray ourselves, what's our brand as a country. We have so many good things happening, but so little is being spoken about. But more about man bites dog. So John, you take it up from there.
Yeah, so anybody else has found any other unique story about Uganda today? Okay, I think it's a good exercise to ask yourself, what are they thinking about us, and how can we take lead in that storytelling? And the commissioner was speaking about investments, and he was talking about trade. He spoke about a lot of the resources that we have in the country, but then how can we tell the right stories to draw participation from other people that can come and help to build the economy. And so today, next, we're going to hear from the Commissioner of Trade, from the Ministry of Trade, Mr. Johnson Abitekaniza. He needs to tell us what are the implications of how we present these stories. What are the bigger implications for trade? And I kept asking myself, what is in it for us? You know, I mean, if I just keep writing good stories, then what happens? Is there a value addition that comes for the country? What are the things we might have missed out in our reporting? So we will welcome Commissioner Johnson Abitekaniza.
Thank you, MC, and the organizers, and thank you, the influencers of this country and the globe who are in this room. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I have told you, I'm Johnson Abitekaniza. I work with the Ministry of Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives. And by God's grace, I'm responsible for business development and quality assurance at the ministry. I want to begin from the point that the media we are talking about influences, it controls, whether locally or internationally. So, on one side, if you are a sociologist, pick the influence. If you are the other side, pick control. And so, when you pick a pen, there's a time when it was a pen and a notebook. I don't know, these days you seem to have gone to another level, because I see people at times with small gadgets here and there. But still, in all that, the intention is to increase visibility. Incidentally, when they are talking about the bad stories and the good stories, you will find the one written by our media house here, bad, the one written by another person in a different direction about the country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we need to have how we can see the issue of enhancing our communication how do we reduce on the expenses and also increase on our productivity for this country? Whatever you are putting out there has implications on all that. And from the business perspective, I would want to think somebody is able to bring out such kind of effect on the people listening to you. I know there's one local area I went to, and the people were calling in, and what the person called to say was a goat had given birth to 3 kids. And somebody was asking, what is the sense? Somebody spends airtime to just tell these people that this is what has happened. But you know what is happening on our various stories, even locally, where there is that threat. Now, I know the commissioner had already indicated that the media affects perception. And in terms of trade, we would want to tell you that the various people out there listen to us. Some of these stories have come in when there is a very big event. When a NAM is about to start, somebody says in Uganda, they are cooking food using transformer oil. When another big event is coming up, that's when the FACO issue came in. Now, you'll find that it's like you are saying whoever is coming to this should not be able to come in. Now, you have been told that our trade deficit is at 4.8 billion, and we are thinking of how to reduce it. And now, reducing it, we want to see what is it that we can do. Maybe later I'm going to tell you some of the interventions we have been able to do. What about investors? Investors' confidence has been really affected by the media, even the consumer perceptions. I know the commissioner has already said that somebody can invest in Kenya and sell here because our trade protocols allow them to sell things here. And at the end of the day, we shall end up as a supermarket of others, while our own products are not getting to the market. Some of you are following the trends. You know what the EU has done to our coffee. I don't know whether some of you have noted that the EU has made a regulation not to buy coffee from a country where there is child labor and where they have cut forests to plant coffee. Now, if you went to a village where they are growing coffee, locally, would you leave your child when you are harvesting coffee or when you are weeding? Maybe not, because locally, I remember one time during COVID, I met one man in Mbarara, and he said, if you are thinking about opening schools, to me, I would be the last person to suggest that the children can keep home slightly more, because I have had an opportunity to have these children and understand who likes the cows, who can look after them, which means every morning he would assign them and even monitor them. But now, if we said Uganda is going that direction, what would be the problem? Now, we have had a lot of protocols signed, and we would also want to rally you to join us in disseminating them. But these trade relations have an implication when they are talked about in a negative. But as I have just said, we also, that might be on our side, to engage with you to see that we should be able to give you information that you can share with those people on the trade agreements, the various trade protocols. For example, at the level of ESC, what is it that we have negotiated? At the level of COMESA, at the level of the African Free Continental Trade Area, all those directions. Look at tourism. The people who are coming here at times reduce because of the messages that they receive, and therefore we need to see how we work together to reduce on the impact of the negativity. Now, ladies and gentlemen, while we say all that, because I know all of us have understand the impact. Because when you wake up, when you pick up your pen and notebook, or you pick that iPad, you know what you are going to communicate, and at times the impact. We might have concentrated there. But I want to say, you might say, where do we get the right information? One, the Ministry of Trade, Industry and Cooperatives, and the other MDAs, there are websites that are there where you can pick information about what is happening in the sector. We have a trade portal, which is like a directory to give direction on why, if you wanted anything in the sector, where you can be able to get it, including the other partners, even the private sector players that we deal with. You'll find a link that is leading you to Private Sector Foundation, to UMA, to UZIA, such that you are able to link and get that information that you can be able to relay. Because I am saying this because at times we have had that situation where people say, for us, we wrote what we had, and therefore, where do we get the other? And you could be aware that through the electronic single window, we are starting to issue licenses and permits, which is a multi-sectoral and multi-institutional use IT system. If it's the Ministry of Water giving permits for timber, you can log on to it. Now, on top of that, ladies and gentlemen, I want to say that some of these things that we have been able to, that have created a negative image or a negative reporting, as we can call it, we have interventions that are coming in. You could have heard, the President has just assented to the competition law in the last few months, and we are working on the regulations to that effect. And so, the issue of competition that at times come up will have to be addressed. We are members of the GSI-1, which is a global standards body, not standards as per certification, but standards for traceability and for fair trade. And so we want to make sure that a product produced here is able to be traced in every other place, given that we are going into fair trade, we are continuing to be concerned of the products that are being produced here. But as we apply to be members there, the person will look at what is this country that wants to be a member to this institution. And if we have the directions on the different side, we may not be accepted. We have also tried to resolve the non-tariff barriers with the negotiations. Obviously, the issue of the milk, the maize that is continuing to come up. We have a reporting system, which is also multi-institutional in the country, to ensure that we reduce on those barriers, such that tomorrow we are not having a big negative impact on the failure to take milk into Kenya, or the issue of dealing with the DRC. And if you get a challenge in the NTBs, you are able to report, and all of the institutions responsible will see those messages at the same time. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would want to continue to request that we continue to put up these other information that would lead to the development of this country. I could also share with you some of the areas when you are reporting on the production of products in the country. There is the policy of Buy Uganda, Build Uganda. We at times hold the boo-boo exhibitions. And you'll find during that period, maybe a few of the people we engage with have had a small, I know there's that competition for space in this media, but at times there's when we may need to be intentional on what we report. Look at the issue of the celebration of the International Cooperative Day that happens every July. What are the good things that come with those cooperative week that the cooperators show? The issues of the micro, small, and medium enterprises, where we also have to showcase the good things that they are able to bring in, and their participation in increasing productivity, in their participation in increasing the economic levels of this country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I know I have brought in those directions, and on our side, we want to say that while those have come out, you know, we might say what happened previous has happened, but now as we go forward, on our side, I have tried to hint on the directions where we can get the information such that we are able to give the proper picture, but also in the various tables where you sit in the various newsrooms, please try to consult the various offices so that we can engage and have a better picture which will lead to the economic growth of this country. Ladies and gentlemen, I only want to recognize that you as influencers, you as controllers of people's minds have a contribution to play in the trade development, both locally and internationally. And therefore, we need to join hands with one another to see that we give that picture that will lead to that economic development. I thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, for your very summarized words of intelligence. Up next, we're going in for a short panel discussion. And during the panel discussion, probably towards the end, we will have an opportunity for your reactions, for some questions, not only for the discussion that is going to be had at the panel discussion, but from the two previous speakers' presentations. So at this moment, I want to welcome Mr. Charles Mwangusha, our moderator for today's panel, and he will do the introductions of the rest of the panelists. So, Charles, you're very welcome.
Thank you, Jesse. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, Charles Mwangusha. I work with Next Media, where I host a couple of shows, The Frontline and NBS Face Off. I've been asked to chair or moderate the panel this morning. And the theme we're going to discuss is media that works for Uganda in a global setting. That's what we're going to interact with. Commissioner was just talking here and calling us influencers. And I was looking around the table, and I discovered that if you check, actually, the influencers in this country are not in this room. Isn't it? Sheila Gashumba should be here. She's a certified influencer. Yeah? Is the other one Baby Gloria or somebody? Baby Gloria is an influencer. Bad Black is an influencer. So I'm wondering where our space is. Full Figure is an influencer. I'm wondering where our space is as we get into this conversation. As I bring in my panelists, we had a similar conversation. I don't know if Moses was part of that conversation, but many years ago, around 2011, during the Walk to Work protest, I think Robert Kabushenga was asked to put together a small team of people to discuss how we're communicating the country in the midst of the Walk to Work. For some reason, I don't know how, I was invited to be part of that conversation. We sat at the Serena. We had former Prime Minister. I think he was also acting Minister for Foreign Affairs at the time, J. Palm. We had Minister of Defense. I think it was Dr. Crispus Kionga. We had Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sam Kutesa, and a few other people. And we had an interesting conversation about how we're communicating the country at that time, during that heat. And, but I don't see most of the people who are in there. So let's look forward to how we discuss today. And Moses reminded me about that story. I wanted to ask, how did it end? The Onyangos had arrested somebody, some restaurant owner, with that special delicacy in the meal. I waited to see how the story ended. Mainstream media picked up the story. There was no follow-up. So we don't know what happened. Was it? Was he prosecuted? Ladies and gentlemen, join me to have the following people take up these seats here. Let's have, I think this should be in order of hierarchy and seniority. Let's have the editor-in-chief, head content generation at Vision Group, Miss Barbara Kaija. She doesn't need a lot of introduction. She'll say the rest for herself. As Barbara walks up the table, up the dais, can we have Sarah Kajingo? Sarah is CEO, founder and CEO at Soft Power, an online publication, but she's also the vice president at PSFU. Yeah? Former guild president. Yes. Sarah, very nice to have you on the panel here. Let's have from the Editors Guild, a very seasoned editor, my former colleague at the Monitor, Alex B. at Haiti. And this one has been described as a scion in online publication. Founded the Chimp Corps and Chimp Reports, Giles Mohammed. The mighty Chimp, Chimp Reports. Is the chief, So, ladies and gentlemen, you have a microphone on your table, each one of you. You'll use that to speak to us. Kindly turn it off once you're done. Let me start with the same question that Jana Jwang asked as we got in here. Who is responsible for the negative image that Uganda sometimes enjoys globally, in your perspective? I'm starting with Giles Mohammed. Turn on the microphone. I think you press somewhere. We forgot to check if they're working.
Hello, hello.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me? I think the people who are responsible for the negative image that we have are the people who are supposed to deliver public services. For example, recently, there was an exhibition of potholes. Surely, who is to blame for that? It's government, it's KCCA. So, when the people decide to exhibit what is in their communities, they are not to blame. They have reached a breaking point, and they think that that is the language that the authorities can understand. So the people who fail to deliver public services, the people who engage in corruption, the people who fail to address crime in our society, I think are solely responsible for the negative image. Thank you.
Alex B. Can you borrow from Giles or maybe from Sam? Okay.
Yes, thank you, Charles. I used to do a lot of practice, but these days I like to look at the theory of things. Now, your question that question was very interesting. I was wondering whether we should give the hard answer or the easy answer. I remember telling my neighbor that the easy answer was, if they ask you who is responsible for this Uganda's poor image, I'll say it is Dr. Chris Baryomunsi, who is government. But I think the hard answer has to be me. It has to be me. What have I done to enhance a good image of the country? What have I done to enhance a good image of Uganda? What have I done to enhance a good image of me? So it has to start with us. Even what Judge is saying, those people who deliver poor public services, they do that because we are not holding them to account. We are not holding them to account. Our civic responsibility is so low that people are doing what they want, and then problems come.
Sarah? This microphone seems to be in right mode or something. Barbara, you better check yours before.
Do you hear me? Yes.
It's working now, I think.
Yeah, I think Charles's question is very interesting. Who is responsible for Uganda's negative image? And to that, I'll say that it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that we coalesce around national interests, build our country, contribute to its well-being. And for me, mine will be a call to the public sector, private sector, to ensure that we do some introspection and decide to really do everything better, execute projects in their set timelines, and as citizens, go back to the basics. But you know, Uganda is is a country where each one of us has a stake, and we each have contributed to what's happening. But on a positive note, so many great things are happening. Charles, I'll tell you that recently we had a post-budget dialogue, and over the last 1 year, I've been reading everywhere on all social platforms, including some major media reports, that Uganda is sinking in debt. And the PSST takes to the podium and says that Uganda's GDP, debt to GDP ratio is 47.9%, and therefore that our debt is actually sustainable. So you then wonder, who drives these negative perceptions? So for me, as a person who joined digital many years ago, I think there's something that's happening that we need to be woke to, and this is the change of gatekeeping. You don't need an editor anymore. I know that Madam Barbara Keija is our senior. She has always done great gatekeeping. But before she even, New Vision is out tomorrow, young people are out there. We grew up in a generation that feared everything. We feared church, we feared our leaders in the mosque, we feared our parents, we feared everything, feared the teacher, feared the schools. And here comes a generation that is digital proficient, digital fluent, and will question you, including on matters that they really are not sure are correct. So we have to be woke to that. And this is a call now to the leaders in the public sector, the civil service, to really know that you can no longer run away, that these Gen Zs who are digitally proficient can sniff wrong things that happen inside there, that it doesn't matter how much an image you create on your digital platforms, it must really be consistent with what's happening in the organization. Thank you.
Barbara, you have the last word on this. It will be interesting to hear your perspective on who is responsible.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Am I okay?
Yes, you are.
Okay. I'm a bit confused. I kept wondering, what do we want to achieve with this interaction? And the reason I'm asking that, because if we want a strategy for how to make Uganda better, then maybe we need to be in a more close meeting and discuss communication. If we want to talk to legacy media and tell legacy media, please, we don't want this out, then I don't know how we are going to address the online media. And the reason I'm taking this broad approach is because the discussion we are having is actually not a simple discussion. It's not a simple discussion because Luganda, a language which I understand very well, I'll just say the word in Luganda and you'll understand. Bakuma mbugo ngalubale mubbe. You're closing the doors when the horses have bolted. Because I work for a media house where I have been very deliberate. I've been deliberate because when I retire and I'm old, I want to say I contributed to the development of my country. And that is why for every single day, we have got a developmental product. Whether it is farming, whether it is enterprise for youth, whether it is health, whether it is children and education, whatever it is, whether it is oil and gas, business, we've every single day got very many positive stories. Actually, 70% of the product is positive. And that is deliberate. It's a deliberate strategy. And that cuts across the media house. There may be one or few items that go off the cuff, but generally we try to be positive because we want to develop the nation. Actually, our strategy is we contribute to national development. Now, having said that, it is not a responsibility that legacy media can carry alone. And if I can say what I mean by legacy media, I mean the large media houses that are controlled and managed, and where you have an editor who you can hold to account, or a managing editor that you can hold to account. So for most of those media houses, this discussion makes sense. Sadly, these are not the media houses that are necessarily out there painting the image of. And I know Mr. Watasa said that if the legacy media sets the role, do I have your attention?
You do.
Sorry.
Absolutely.
It will be different. I want to say, Mr. Watasa, that we need more than this. We need a government strategy that looks at development. Recently, I think there was a story in one of the media houses, and the story was saying how Uganda, and I don't know whether it is a true story or not, but it was saying how Uganda's social media government accounts were being managed by robots. I don't know whether anybody remembers such a story. So, robots, if we are discussing strategy, robots is not a good strategy. What is the strategy? Uganda has got over 78% of the population under 30. These are the kids who are out there that Sarah has been talking about. A good number of them do not have jobs. All of them are talented. So as a country, if we are really, really, really serious about having a positive image. And I'm saying having a positive image. I've gone away from service delivery because maybe that's not something we can sort out. But if we are positive about having a positive image, why don't we create an army? Create an army of social media people who are going to tell the story of Uganda.
Barbara, you have gotten into a lot of the questions I wanted to ask because you didn't answer my question. If you had answered my question, maybe we'd get there. So, can we get back to who is responsible, in your view?
Everybody can do something. Everybody can do something. Service delivery. Service deliveries. We start with service delivery.
Let's go back. Let's go back to media, because we're media practitioners, and like you said, legacy media. And start by interrogating where you sit as a gatekeeper. And like you rightly said, yes, like you rightly said, there are gatekeepers in legacy media. Moses talked about it, but there are also the unbridled others.
Mohamed, I have responded to that. I have told you what I have done for many years, and I have told you my part. That has still not sorted the problem. And that's why I'm telling you, we go back to service delivery. We go back, and now I was coming to government, as in Mr. Watasa, the department Mr. Watasa is presenting. I was coming to that to say that, look, can we create an army of social media people that are going to tell those positive stories? Can we give those armies content? And I was returning to legacy media to say, if this army needs content, we can then return to the media and say, how do we get this content produced? Or, if you want, you can set up alternative. And the reason I'm going that way is because you have got many, many kids out there. They'll wake up in the morning and think of anything. But if you can bring them in a pool and give them the media, you'll make a difference. And that's why I started by saying I don't know whether we are discussing strategy or what are we discussing.
Thank you. Moses will tell us at some stage what we are discussing, whether strategy or something else. But I want to go back to the editors here, because most of you have been editors, most of you have been in the field reporters. The world has changed and moved ahead of most of us in terms of avenues for communication. You're talking about citizen journalism in 2007. It's since been overtaken by events radically, by what is going on and the technological changes. Where does that leave legacy media and the gatekeeping responsibility? Moses put it right and said, someone is going back to check. We've seen this story. Until someone else says, reports it, we're not sure it's the true story. How does the media today fit in that responsibility? Alex, you sit at the Editors Guild.
Thank you. It is true that the digital migration in the media industry has put pressure on some of our most influential media platforms, and they are paying attention on how to survive. And but it is also true that because of that massive digital migration, it has also presented an opportunity for professional media to stand out. Professional legacy media maybe to change the business model and be the media of the media to go to in this chaotic in this chaotic environment. So there is a big opportunity for legacy media to actually get influential again. Even when you see these things people talk about, that before you even report a story, maybe a citizen journalist, maybe an influencer, but sometimes people say, before Monitor or New Vision writes this story, I am not going to believe it. You see, so there is there are challenges which I think can be handled at industry level, but there is really big opportunities that the media can get on and become the influence in this chaotic environment.
Giles, you in digital media and a senior at that, there's a question of responsibility. What image is projected of the country somewhere? I know that from my world, there is no negative story and positive story. News is news. You report it as news. And what makes it news is what defines the perception of the person who's reading it will determine whether it is negative or positive. But at some stage, you realize that conscious, deliberate action can drive an agenda, given that media plays the role of an influencer in the world. From where you sit, the competition is intense. Everybody wants to be the first to break the story. And once it runs, you're thinking, you're calculating by click bites. Legacy media is also going online, shift and try to work out a new model. From where you sit, what is it that needs to be done? You put responsibility on the people who are responsible for service delivery, but you are responsible for how you project those failures or successes. Where do you find yourself locating yourself in what finally comes out to the public for consumption?
Thank you very much. The issue of legacy media has been a very hot one for the last maybe 1.5 decades. And I remember we used to have discussions around 2011, 2012 with Kaushenga. And I used to tell him that your legacy media is not going to survive the next 3 decades unless it adapts. For example, when you look at the New York Times, it has been able to adapt, number one, through integrating emerging technologies like artificial intelligence. They now hire data analysts. For example, UBOS is going to release the national census report, the preliminary findings. And now, the media house, like the legacy media house, should invest in data analysis to help people make sense of the data. So the new media house, actually not only for legacy media, but even us in the digital media, you need experts in artificial intelligence. I can tell you in the next 2, 3, 4 years, even you may not have news anchors. You may have robots reading the news for you and doing it better. They will not need makeup and so on. You need people who are well trained to do videography, to look at statistics and analyze them, to understand predictive analytics and so on and so forth. So it's not the legacy media that is actually facing a threat from citizen journalism, even us, because now we see influencers being more powerful than media houses. We find an influencer has 10 million followers. The legacy media house has 1 million followers. On Twitter, for example, when you look at the situation in Kenya, the protests you're seeing are being led by powerful social media influencers, 10 million followers. You don't see the legacy media and digital media playing a big role. You understand? So the citizen journalism is here to stay with us. We just need to adapt. The legacy media needs to invest in in-depth stories because you have the time. You adapt, you are aggressive online, but you're also big in preparing in-depth stories that make you stand out from the rest. They need to invest in investigative journalism because when you look at print media, their covers over the last maybe 1 year, I can tell you, Charles, it's very hard to find a huge investigative story. So the stories you see on the covers are stories that were reported a day earlier, and these are stories picked from social media or press stories or controversies, Honorable Anita Mong and so on and so forth. So we need to invest a lot of our resources, a a lot of our time in new technologies and investigative journalism for us to survive the citizen journalism. Thank you.
Let me just stay with you for a moment. No country in the world doesn't have its own share of bad things happening. But there are countries, you find a perception that if you read a story from a particular country, it's going to kind of reinforce a certain perception about that country. I'll take you back a few years ago. A bomb would go off in Algeria almost every other day, or in Egypt every other day. But tourists will be flocking in because of how that story is projected by the media of that country. You have a perception. If you looked at you're talking about analytics and statistics. If you found the death rates in San Francisco, for example, out of drug abuse, they will not compare with anything that goes on in this country. But the perception of many Ugandans who consume CNN, CNBC, will tell you they're dying to go to San Francisco. How does the media in Uganda evolve to create that kind of perception about its country without lying about the facts?
Thank you very much. I think it goes back to history. For us, when we were joining the industry, I was at campus in 2007 doing mass comm, but the most popular journalists were those who were critical of government, and the most selling newspapers were those which were negative. So we all aspired to write in a critical way or be negative. So that's why you find stories that are positive in the media. If it's about tourism, if it's about business, if it's about attracting FDI here, people look at them as paid stories, as PR stories. So our society appears to celebrate journalism that pays attention to negativity. So that's why we have plenty of negative content in our media. If you write a positive story about PSFU training young people in Jinja to do business, someone will say this is a paid story, and actually people will not read it. If you have a good story about the lions in Kidepo, the airport that is being built in Kidepo, people will be like, yes, will this airport even be constructed? How was the contract awarded, and so on and so forth. So I think we celebrate negativity as a society, and media houses which run negative articles or critical articles sell more than those which pay attention to positivity.
Sarah, your other gig at Soft Power has some competition, which you and I think in this room, only you and I would know about, called Hard Power. Yeah? Hard Power does the other side of the story, Soft Power does the other side of the story. You have straddled the two worlds of being in the media, being in the digital world, and doing public relations. How, from where you sit, and I know you're advisor at PSFU on media management, how do you navigate where the facts are at odds with the image you want to project? If Moses was given a task by his minister to find a way to project a positive image of Uganda, but the facts don't seem to align, how does he navigate? How would you advise him to navigate?
This is a very, very huge topic that we will not exhaust in a few hours. But I commend the ministry for kickstarting these engagements. You see, Giles has just told you the truth that the Ugandan society is attracted to negative media. So, but for me, when I started Soft Power in 2015, I thought, just like the name goes, it is to shape preferences, shape a positive image of the country. The first week, nobody was reading our stories. But we said, no, we need to be resilient, and I also decided not to recruit writers from already established media houses. I said I'll train myself. I still struggle to date because I promote tourism, we are championing business growth at PSFU. So if a tourist has disappeared in Bwindi, you as the editor, do you say Ugandan security challenged as security as a tourist disappears? Or do you say, for me at Soft Power, what we will say, Uganda steps up security in search of tourists and quickly ensure we are in touch with police, with UPDF on what other steps they are taking, quickly follow up with a headline that says, again, security steps up search, or better yet, because our security is quite resilient, our forces are quite respected in the region, they have kept our country safe for many years, close to 4 decades. I will immediately ensure that another story, just very, very quickly, is published to, for example, break the news that the tourist has been found. So we need, and for me, I'm radically, you see, it's a decision you have to make. If you follow the politics in the United States, you know what narratives CNN is always driving. You know what Fox News drives. So for me, I am unapologetically positive about Uganda, but this is not to say that I'm not struggling at Soft Power. My team, some of my team claim that I deny them scoops, because where I sit, I come across a lot of information. So they are saying, please get out of Soft Power news, focus on narrative crafting and strategic storytelling, and allow us to drive traffic to Soft Power news by taking advantage of the position you're in to access lots of information. And I believe you me, I'm always stopping so many stories. But I'm also yes, just 2 days ago, Elon Musk posted on Twitter, and please, Charles, allow me read Elon Musk's thoughts. And he said, a lot of traditional journalists do not want to be put on the same platform as the average citizen. They are pretty mad about that. Now, I know that is an exaggeration, because I doubt very much that our legacy media are mad, but then he goes on. I think it's very important to elevate citizen journalism. Hear the voice of the people, the actual voice of the people, and not the filtered voice. Not the voice of a handful of editors or of major publications. Do you really want to know what's going on, or you want to read the opinion of editors? And now that speaks to the state of the media in Uganda. The ideologies of the founders drive what is published. Advertisers many times influence what's published. But there is also something, those young people I spoke about, the Gen Zs who are rocking Kenya now, are also saying, we do not trust you online media anymore. We can take charge of matters ourselves. So I think we really need to double our efforts. Uganda is experiencing unprecedented growth. Ugandans have woken up to industrialization. Everybody is involved in some value chain somewhere, in a made in Uganda product, and strategic storytelling, narrative crafting is key to how we position our country in global markets. I think it is in our interest, each one of us, to foster a positive image of our country. And just recently, you hear everybody speaking about ESG as if it is some new buzzword, but this is getting very, very serious. Companies and funders around the world are first pegging their investments on how well you treat people, on whether you have financial fidelity in your company, on whether your business practices are sustainable, and whether they do not negatively impact people and planet. So again, for the journalists and for each one of us, let's invest in ourselves, let's pursue knowledge, continuous professional development, so that we come up with policies, we come up with strategies for our companies, for our small companies, for our country. And I commend the banking industry. They have quickly come up with an ESG policy, the oil and gas sector the same. I think the rest of us and mainstream government need now to take leadership so that we are not left behind and we are not negatively impacted.
Just help us, what is ESG?
ESG is a framework for environment, social, and governance.
Okay, we could think that's a new acronym, some new app that we don't understand. But Barbara, let me come back to you. How in the media, as a gatekeeper, do you navigate between telling the truth as it is, the story as it is, the news as it is, and being seen as doing public relations or spinning, for that matter?
I start by saying...
They don't?
Hello? I start by saying that hello? I start by saying that positive news sells. That's my experience. Positive news sells. Good stories sell. Actually, when I edit and the media house I work for, I do not sell negative. Everybody I have coached, I told them, we do look at the glass as half full, not half empty. We start from the perspective that there is a positive and something could have gone wrong. So positive news does sell. I do not subscribe to the fact that we sell negative news. Now, don't we tell negative stories? We do, because I believe that some of the negative stories are very important to tell. And
the minister is arriving, so just proceed. The minister is arriving.
I'm sorry that Mr. Watasa has gone out because I wanted to address the public health issue.
We could continue the conversation, and then you restate when the minister is also here, listening in, Mr. Watasa.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our line minister, the Minister for ICT and National Guidance, Dr. Chris Bariomonsi. You're welcome, sir. Honorable Minister, you found us in the middle of a conversation of the panel discussion, so, and Barbara is responding, so we'll just let her continue.
Yeah.
That microphone is not doing us any favors. Can we, Sarah, can you help us with yours? It is on. Yeah. Maybe project a little bit more, the voice. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you found when I just made a statement that positive news does sell. And I do not edit from a perspective of news must be negative. I believe stories can be good whether they are positive or negative. And then I was responding to the fact that why would a media house run a story, a public health story? And I'm just taking the example of formalin in food, because Mr. Watasa did raise that issue of a story like formalin in food. I think the other one you raised was what? Fecal matter in water,
aflatoxin.
transformer oil. Now, all those three are public health issues. Unless, Mr. Watasa, you're telling me that you'd rather have tourists than a healthy population. Because if there is transformer oil in food, especially for people who eat out, it means that if you do not raise an alert, the agency concerned with standards has slept on the job. And if they have slept on the job, you're going to have to get a big health budget to manage cancers. You're going to have a sick population. So what is the tourist coming to see if there is a sick population? Is there responsibility in publishing? Yes, there must be responsibility, and it's always there. And I'll give you a story, an example of a story, where as a media house, we did take responsibility. We had been doing this big investigation on Mulago Hospital. But we also knew that NAM and G77 was around the corner. This story was ready in November, and we did not publish it until the end of March. The reason we did not do that was because we knew that anybody who gets sick in Kampala, any of the visitors will be taken to Mulago. Did we do bad to publish the story? No, because we speak for a population that is suffering and cannot speak for themselves. If any of us here has had a sick person in Mulago, you'll know what I'm talking about. So we do take responsibility, but it doesn't mean that we should not do our role. Because if we do not do our role, we let down development. We do ring an alert when we need to, and we do take responsibility when we need to. Do we craft headlines and change things around? Yes. The example she gave, the story she gave of the tourists who died in Windy, we actually took exactly the angle she took. We took the angle of security searching rather than the tourist is dead. But we still told the story. So there is a level at which legacy media can go to tell positive stories. But I wanted, because this discussion is so important, I wanted to say that as we get even to an election, like what we have in Kenya right now, social media. Sorry, I'm trying to draw his attention at the same time. Sorry, I'm trying to draw his attention. What is happening right now in Kenya? They have very strong legacy media, but it's visibly absent. Why is it visibly absent? Because on social media, just a few people making noise can make a difference. And that is why I was coming from when I said, if we are discussing strategy, we need to think about an army that will take that positive story. So the negative stories will still come out. But what about the positive ones? We need to be deliberate about them. Whether you have a strong legacy media or not, you need a strong army of social media positive soldiers that will tell that positive story. I return to the issue of legacy media and whether it is still strong and relevant. Yes, it is, because it does set the agenda. In Uganda, we know that 89% of our population gets their information from radio. Those are about 300 radio stations. We know, just like you said earlier, these radio stations, many of them are hardly equipped, whether with human resource, they are hardly resourced. What do? They get a newspaper which has been produced, whether by Monitor or the New Vision, and they read those newspapers. So legacy media in terms of print still sets the agenda for all those 300 radio stations, even for social media. They will read the newspapers and begin their conversation. So they do set the agenda. TV, of course, is at about 39% viewership. That's 39% of the population get their information from TV. And social media is at about 13%, or online is at, internet actually is at about 13%. All these derive their media agenda from the legacy media. So yes, legacy media is still important. It is still not the only media. It is an ecosystem. Each of these is important. The ecosystem brings in the legacy media, that radio, the TV, and the online. They all are interdependent on one another. And a strategy to boost tourism or to boost business and trade must look at the whole ecosystem. It doesn't help to think that this one is no longer relevant, because you know it is. And I end with a question. Imagine it is 2026 and there is a national election, a New Vision and Monitor newspapers are not there. Then your question is answered.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open this up to the audience. Question or comment, an open discussion for a few minutes, and then we'll come back to the panel. If you don't put up your hand voluntarily, some people will prompt you. Yes, yes, if you could help with the microphone. Let's start with the gentleman there, and then we'll come, and the lady, and then we'll come to Joachim here. Keep it straight and simple.
Thank you.
Your name and the media house organization you represent, and then your question or comment.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, my question, I'm Akela Bismarisha from the Spy Uganda. My question is, when we talk about crafting the headlines, right, in order to produce positive stories, political perspective. So I'll take, for instance, the stories that have been happening, NEMA evacuating people in Nansana. When we look at the stories on the mainstream media, we believe this is not something that has been followed, because most of us get the stories from TikTok or Twitter. So we understand there's that bit of crafting to produce the positive bit. We imagine someone developing a story of NEMA rehabilitating the wetlands. That's a positive story. But then, how are we bringing out the story of the people who are suffering in that state? We've had mothers, one of the persons who was affected talked about how she was evicted and lost most of her property inside. I think she had something like a shop, because she was talking about flasks and the rest. We've had people who are coming out to complain, and if these stories were not on like TikTok, we wouldn't have people who are coming out to offer land to these people, just because maybe we are looking at the perspective of NEMA rehabilitating these wetlands. So how are we putting the voices of the people out there without it being so negative against the government, and then putting out the positive part of what government is doing? Because the people who are looking at everything from a political perspective, they are going to make sure that the government is down. Actually, that's their main focus. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that's an important question. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you.
I don't know who you wanted to answer that question from the panel, but I think each one of them will make an attempt. Any specific person? Sarah? Okay.
Yes, thank you. My name is Yebe Lam Anthony, and I work with Uganda Catholic Television. My question would go to all the panelists. How do we craft Uganda's media positivity when there's lack of communication, coordination from government agencies? You have GCIC, you have Media Center, you have Ministry of ICT. Sometimes things are happening and there's lack of information to be shared with the media out there. And then everyone goes on his own. It's really consistent that there is lack of coordination among government agencies and the ministries to make sure that if there is something out, an incident has occurred, there's an official response from it. And I think we need to address this, because if we don't address this, there won't be any time to handle such cases. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have the microphone come to Joachim? Yes. Yes. The microphones are in riot this morning.
Thank you so much. Morning, everybody. Honorable Minister. Of course, the main question which was put to us is about the poor image of the country outside. And I last studied the physics many years ago, but I think image is a reflection of object. So I think we need to fix the object. If we put an elephant somewhere before the mirror, we shall not see a chicken in the mirror. So there are those who are responsible for what is the biggest negative story on Uganda out there today. Maybe people being sanctioned. So I don't know what legacy media can do about that. So let everybody do their part, as we said. And good, now the government is here. I think if you have to do bad, maybe make sure you're not discovered. Yeah. If you need to do bad, make sure it remains, it will be buried with you. So let that message go out there. We are not priests to preach to people not to do bad. But those who intend to do bad should be told to make sure they are not discovered. There's no way you can prevent that one going out there. However, our business, and we are looking for a strategy to get the good out about this country. There is plenty of good, and I think what we need, Ndugu Watasa, is to ensure that this information, first of all, is digested and availed readily, maybe in the beginning, to select players and ultimately to everybody. One of us, Sarah, mentioned about debt. Are we in a debt crisis or not? I disagree, Sarah. I think we have a problem. You are quoting Ramadan that the situation is okay. But, so we need to get a very synthesized and defendable position from the government, from ICT ministry, so that we present it as it is. Because if the debt, we are struggling to service the debt, when the principal becomes due, which is not very far off, which it will be a different story. So let us have the information clearly explained, and then it can be put out there. But there is an enormous lot of good in our country. We are aware of it, but let us strategically put it out. Thank you.
You raise an interesting thing about the date. If government figures are saying 47, our debt to GDP is at 47%. The dangerous threshold is 52%, isn't it? Meaning that you're effectively about 5 percentage points below. But you're screaming and saying Uganda is wallowing in a debt crisis. Is it actually wallowing in a debt crisis? Who's responsible for bringing out the actual image? Because there's perception on one side, there are the facts on the other.
Yes, let the correct position be arrived at by the experts in government, then through Ndugu Chris Baryomusi, will get the accurate picture, and we have one voice out there when we are describing our country.
Okay. Yes, sir. The spy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Mwangusha. My name is Andrew Rumba. I work with the SPY Uganda. I'm also the president for Indoja, an association that manages the online journalists. So this topic actually affects or directly concerns me. I just wanted to make one or two concerns. I wanted to respond to Madam Sarah Kajingo. Sarah Kajingo said that tourist, she will make sure that she bends the narrative and shows that the security is doing a very good job. My question was, if that tourist is dead, what are you going to do? I see that we want to actually, what is happening right here now is that the exhaust pipe is emitting gas, and you don't realize that it's not the exhaust pipe, it's just an engine. The engine is the one with the problem, but you want to blame the exhaust pipe. The exhaust pipe is emitting what the engine is producing. Uganda has very poor managers. When they manage the affairs of the country badly, they want now to gag the media to report positively. Oh no, me, I will not be part of those people. I will report what is happening. I will not manufacture anything.
Let's tease out your tourist in Bwindi.
Yes.
How many ways could you craft a headline around the tourist in Bwindi disappearing?
One thing is that a tourist has died in the Bwindi, Metropo Forest. She has died. If he has been hit by a suspected ADF, I will also say that. Suspected, I'm not sure. If a truck has been burnt along the road, I also say that one. There is somebody who is responsible for the safety of that tourist. If I don't mention it, I am covering up for that person. That person will not do their job. So, to begin with, let me give you a clear example. Last Sunday, the other Sunday, was with the Honorable Chris Variomus. He's my brother. I was with him at a certain function. I went to him and told him, Honorable Chris Variomus, are you following up the trend of music our artists are now emitting to our society? Are you following? He said, yes, I'm following. That's what he told me. He's here. He's following. What are you doing about it? So that's when you listen to the music of yesteryears, of my comrade here, and you listen to today's music. If you are a country in charge, you cannot fail to at least try to show that you are working under someone, little person. Someone him at least. He gets to know that he's doing something wrong. So we wait our society to go into the trenches, then you come and tell the media, please cover up. I will not cover you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pius, before I come to you, behind there.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Dick Imvule. I work with Radio Simba. Mine goes to Barbara. At what stage do we become, we as journalists, do we become unpatriotic and, or patriotic and defend the image of the country, and also become unpatriotic and deny the nation good information? At what stage? Thank you.
Pius, I'll come to you, sir, in a moment. Yes, I'll come to you in a moment.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I have a comment and also a question. The first question, do we really have negative image? And why I'm asking that question is because it appears from the minds of the ICT ministry, there's an army out there to create negative image. So it is presumptive of some bad motive on the side of the media. Another thing, and why do I say so? Because look at the US. US has a lot of bad stories. The most prominent being that strangers walk into schools and shoot what? And shoot the students. But this has not stopped the world, including Ugandans, from flocking to US. But why is it that when maybe a tourist is killed in Uganda, then we start thinking that, oh, now this story shouldn't have come up because it's going to stop tourists? I think it's also about power dynamics, okay? We are poor, we can't influence certain things, and then we continue to have that mindset of a poor person that, you know, since I'm poor, I must keep telling lies about myself in order to attract visitors. There was a story, there used to be a story when we were still young. I told about a jealous woman who had an ugly daughter, and she had also a stepdaughter. Stepdaughter was beautiful, but what this jealous woman used to do was to smear the beautiful stepdaughter's dung. But still the suitors left the other ugly daughter and went for the other smeared daughter. So the story behind that is that if you keep true to yourself, that truth will save you. Okay? You don't have to lie. Then the final one. I'm happy that the minister is here.
Was that the question or the comment? Which one is coming next?
It's up to you. It's up to you. So I'm happy that the minister is here, and the ICT ministry that takes the national guidance docket. I've struggled to understand what is national guidance. And do we have a vision as a country? And a vision shouldn't be confused. My understanding, vision shouldn't be confused with a manifesto. And do we have a vision? If you walked on the street today and asked any Ugandan, what is Uganda's vision? How are we expected as Ugandans supposed to conduct ourselves? What are the things that we don't like? What are the things that we like? How do we want to see this country in the next 2 years or next 5 years or 50 years? Thank you.
You haven't seen the production of the National Planning Authority?
No.
We have a vision for the country. It's now 2040? Huh? Okay. Yes, sir. And then I'll come to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Grace Pirato Sebogwao. I'm working with Inaman Radio and Google Day TV. My concern is in question form. One, how am I going to fight the truth versus making up? Because the people that we are portraying there, where we are saying we are painting a bad image, who are those representatives of Uganda? The key persons is the government, and have they taken the lead at least to mind about what they do before we capture it and take whatever we want? So have they done so? Then the next thing is when the negatives surpass the positives, what am I going to fight for? Yes, patriotism is right, but the major concern here is that I have to go out there, tell the truth, how that truth happened, and later I will say, yes, I'm a patriot because I fight for the truth and for my motherland. Thank you.
Okay. Let's hear from the lady here.
Thank you very much. My name is Rosemary Kemidisha, and I work with Uganda Human Rights Commission. But I'm an ex-journalist, if that exists. I have two quick questions for the panel, but I would like to add to Pius's concern. I think Pius meant national values more than vision.
Okay.
What is positive? What are we talking about when we say positive? Is it the opposite of what has happened? So, and since we are with the ministry that is responsible for the national values. Maybe they can guide on how far the process of establishing national values has gone. Because we know that during the chaos in the elections in Kenya, it was actually the national values that helped the media to take a position to prevent the country from sinking into, much worse chaos than we saw. Now my question is, we have seen a Minister of Internal Affairs, for lack of a better word, laughing at Afande Enanga because he struggles to tell. His colleague says he struggles to defend the country, okay? So, my question is, do we have consistency and trust within the sources of this information we are talking about? We get information from different sources, and sometimes it is even contradictory. But these are official sources of information. So, are we putting the cat before the horse?
Rosemary, do you want to call that sources or official communicators?
Official communicators.
Is the communication from government coherent, consistent, and conscious of what it is communicating before you even get, because as journalists we'll get our own sources, but there is the official channels. So Marcella there, Bwanonyango here, the team with Enanga, the team up at Ministry of Defense, and the others who communicate government.
There are also sources as far as I'm concerned. Okay. Because sometimes you get your tip and you cross-check it with them. With Mr. Afande Onyango here or Enanga. So in a way, they are official communicators, but they are also sources of the information we use. So how do we trust the sources of this information? How consistent are these sources? If Afande Enanga has lied to us today, how can we trust what he will tell us tomorrow? Lastly, can this conversation be held without us discussing the welfare of the media? Ms. Sarah here lightly confessed that she was struggling with having readers, and I believe that is part of the sources of revenue. If you don't have readership, if you don't have followers, if you don't have buyers, then your business is in problems.
Thank you.
So how do we hold this conversation? Why do we remember the media when there is some bit of crisis, but we don't delve into the deep, the elephant in the room? Yes. How do they survive? They sell negative media because they are selling. Thank you.
Thank you. The last comment, I think. Yes. Last one would be that, because we need to wrap this up.
Sewalo Mike is my name, and I work with UBC as a senior camera person. I picked interest in what Madam Kaija was talking about. I feel like we are kind of downplaying the role of social media, and people are looking at it as something simple. She says mainstream drives the narrative, and indeed this is an issue of the narrative. I don't know how many people in this day and era, because we're in the information age, I don't know how many people in this day and era take time to watch TV and listen to radio as it used to be those days, unlike it is today. Many of us pick these stories off of social media. There is a TV program airing on TV, and then there is a clip cut out and a narrative driven off of that 30 seconds of a clip. And that's what's going to move. I'll give an example of the recent Uganda Airlines clip that is moving of our aircraft in India. A kid sat down and edited something, and there was fire in the engine. And it's moved, and people think it's real. I want to ask the media people here, who of you took time to go and counter that? I bet none. You get? but this was cut by a kid on TikTok. That social media drives the narrative in this way. The travel advisories from the embassies. This lady here was saying, tourists take this information off of the internet. Yes, indeed they do. Someone wants to come to Uganda, they're going to go and check on the American Embassy travel advisory, and they will be like, what is happening in Uganda? Whatever they post there, that's the final truth. If the ADF are somewhere, and they're actually not in Uganda, but just on the borders, that is enough for them to say, I cancel my trip to Uganda because it's in proximity. Then lastly, I wonder how long we are going to go on hosting these meetings enclosed and without, trusting the so-called influencers. The people seated here, how many of you have tweeted about this event happening right now? You go on the ministry page, see how many retweets. You count the people seated here, and you go on the ministry page. Check how many people have retweeted this event going on here. That's the role of the influencers. One influencer would make this event get known, and the topics discussed here are very important. The world needs to know. Ugandans need to know what we are talking about here.
Just before you drop the microphone, I know someone will answer you from here. The ADF carries out an attack in a place called Kasinde near the border. And the reporting is that ADF attack inside Uganda. Many of the tourists maybe are coming into Kampala and then heading to Murchison, heading to Kidepo, heading elsewhere, hundreds of kilometers away. How does the media report that story without creating that image that Uganda is one tiny country, that an incident happening at the extreme other border affects life elsewhere?
And that's the question you need to ask the media personnel here. That's what we want them to answer.
You're one of them.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Innocent Nahabwe. I happen to lead the National Association of Broadcasters, where a lot of the fingers are now pointing, essentially, we who do broadcast. In the interest of time, I'll just keep it brief. We might be looking at media stories, but like Paya said, ultimately, at the end of the day, is, I think it was, about the image. The biggest challenge that I seem to be having about the timing is we are coming to the end of the financial year, so I hope it is not just, the conversation is really to just make sure we sweep this. But if the purpose is for us to influence what is going to happen, I was hoping this would happen around March, so that whatever we discuss can then eventually come into the budget. And then can eventually come into the communication strategy and the national strategy and where this is headed. From a marketing perspective, it's not that some of these companies don't have issues. Sometimes you want to send your money and the money doesn't go. Sometimes you want to call and the phone call doesn't come, but we still trust them. You know why? They have a consistent marketing strategy. They have a consistent identity, so we know who they are. And we have come to believe some of the things that define them as part of their identity. The colors, the tagline, the goals, the objectives, what is important to them, the priorities. We seem to be doing very badly in regards to shaping who we really are. Is Uganda about Rolex? At one time, that's what the Minister of Trade was, tourism was pushing. Is it about big bums? I don't think so. So what is it then about? We know what Bosnia is about. We know what some of these countries are about. We know what Tanzania is about. And the identity is very clear. Even the one who wants to abuse knows that if, you know what is funny? That Uganda has the biggest population of gorillas But some country in the neighborhood kind of positions themselves as the home of gorillas. I think they eat here, but sometimes cross over the other side and then they position as themselves. I think we will be able to see the image of the country if it is well crafted and put together, consistently communicated with an attendant budget. But it appears government does not really consider this to be very important. We asked very recently, we had an engagement with the PSST, and he said there is budget for media, the budget for communication, for all the ministries and what they are doing. And then when he left, we went and asked and looked, and there was no budget. There was no vote on media. So we ask ourselves, if we think communication is important, why is there no budget for it? And if there is no budget for it, how will the media, because the government is the biggest spender, not so, how will these people finance and have credible people on their team? How will they hire good people? Or the good people will end up being in the ministries also trying to grab and share the national cake like we had recently. So how will they then be able to, how will they be sustainable? And if they cannot employ and retain good people, how will they report the stories properly? So I think it all starts and breaks somewhere around Chris's place on how he organizes the communication of this country and what brand we actually put out there and how much money we are spending to push that brand and to make us, as Uganda, a love mark where people will know what our unique selling proposition is and know what we are known for. Not Rolex or big bamboo.
Thank you, Dr. Nahabwe. Let me have, I'm afraid, the last one, because I said that was the last, and then I was influenced.
So I come to
Yeah. Pardon? I need really to close this, so I need to close this. Is there someone else? I apologize, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Joseph Beyangam, Secretary General NAB, National Association of Broadcasters. Thank you very much, Innocent. Actually, I had my two questions written, and you just opened with the first one. The huge dilemma that we are facing as a country. I think this needs to be addressed not just only by Chris. Yes, Chris will communicate, but all the stakeholders, starting with me, we need to decide who are we? As a people, who are we? And then the moment we answer that question, we need to go to the second part. What kind of media do we want? Sometime back when the media, the airwaves were liberalized, we have radio stations, 320 radio stations in Uganda. This market is so small, it can't handle those radio stations. But now the question, we dropped the ball at the licensing part of it. We need to go back. I've been in the media industry for some time, and specifically radio. I know we can still claw it back and win. Because what we have, what Commissioner Watasa described at the beginning of the radio station he went into, that's not a media house. We need to first sort out our place at home before we can go out. So we need to also, that's basically the question of media viability and the things we communicate. Because now, today I was checking online in the morning, and you know, Kenya with the demonstration going on. The Communications Commission Authority, the UCC of Kenya, put out a statement, we won't touch the internet. In Uganda, everybody will be, you'll be like if you're still on. So these are some of the things we need to talk about, because internet, it's not, internet passes through Uganda going somewhere. It's not just a Ugandan thing. There are people in the other parts of the world who want to reach Uganda through the internet. If you take it off, you are touching a global property. Senior advisors meets a human right. So there are things we need to look at and look, you know, every year you can't be on the global media index. You can't be dropping every year you are dropping corruption, you are dropping, you are chasing away people. However much Barbara would like to communicate a good story, there's a limit. So we need to understand, answer that fundamental question, who are we? And then after that, how do we want to communicate it? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid we have to close it there. Honorable Minister, you missed out a comment. I don't know if Moses listened to it, from Elder Joachim. Said, if you want to look at a good image, fix the object. So whenever we stand in front of a mirror, you look at what is there and then you especially the ladies. Yes, when you, if it's shining a little bit more, you need to brush it out. You don't wait to brush up the picture on the other side. I think that's the comment he made. So is it the mirror, is it the object? To get a good image. We're looking for a good image. So is it the mirror that has that? Is it the object that is problematic? Where is the problem? Let me bring this back to the panel. Barbara had a few questions, Sarah, and then comments from, you respond to the feedback from the audience. So let's start with Barbara. And I pray we do this in 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. It's been a very engaging morning. At what stage do we become defend the image of the country? And at what stage do we become unpatriotic and hide information? I would like to say that we should always be patriotic. Being patriotic doesn't mean you hide information. I think what we are discussing is how you tell the information, how you put it. And that is why we have got editors. How do you tell the story? And that glass for me and the people I edit with, the glass is always half empty rather than half full. So I look at it from a positive perspective, and then I tell what I have to tell. We tell negative stories, we must, if they're to protect our population. Public health, I have said it before the minister before, and I say it again, there is no compromise, because we will not govern a dead population. Tourists will not to a dead population. Business will not happen if a population is sick. Who is responsible to tell the story of Uganda? I would like to say we are all responsible. You and I are responsible. The citizen is responsible, but government is also responsible. Sorry, some echo. When NAM and G77 happened, and I'm sure the Ministry of ICT does appreciate this, the media in Uganda actually told Uganda's story very beautifully without a budget. We did it without a budget. I don't remember that we got any money, or if we got it was very little, but we still told the story. That actually shows that the media in Uganda, especially the legacy media, is a very, very positive. Changing consumer habits. Somebody said we are looking at legacy media, but the media habits have changed, and I do agree with that. I want to return and say that it has taken the New York Times 20 years. It took them 20 years to make money from online media. And that is in an America, they started in 1992, retrogressed a bit, came back in 1995, and it's only recently that they began making money online. So when you discuss about why isn't legacy media making money online, remember that even our market is just beginning to buy online, even buying online. We are just, so somebody will have to fund the media. And I'm ending with this, but I want to question the way especially government buys media. Government in Africa, and especially in Uganda, is the biggest media funder. By the way, whether it is for New Vision or for Monitor or for any radio station, government is still the biggest media funder. So how do we buy media? Are we looking at the population size that that media channel is serving? I know so many politicians have opened up radio stations, and they probably are just serving their constituency. And when you look at the budgets they are getting, they are still larger than budgets that a big radio station is serving. So if we do that to our own media, we are killing our own. Repeat, look at a situation where you have to cover 2026 and there is no legacy media. I beg to submit and end.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you. Just a clarification. When I said we were struggling, I did not mean that we struggle to date. I just sought to really emphasize that Uganda has changed. If Giles publishes a negative story and I publish a tourism-related story, Ugandans will be dashing to chimp reports and ignoring us. But the years have also proven, just like our senior Barbara Keija has said, that soft power has grown on the basis of positive news. Good people, negative news affects all of us as a country. Each time we have those screaming negative headlines, tourists cancel. I am a member of the tourism think tank, very active in the tourism sector. Tour operators, some even take to ranting on social media. You have seen Amos Wekesa, and he's just a representative of more than 500 tour operators. If FDI is affected, exporters will be affected, but your small business will be affected as well. The other one, our senior has spoken about authenticity of communication. Who is more authentic regarding matters finance in Uganda? If the PSST says our debt to GDP ratio is 47.9%, why would we not believe him and take to unofficial channels or believe unofficial sources? And I think I should use this opportunity to speak further about debt. As a person who champions the growth of business in Uganda, debt is not a bad thing. Businesses borrow, countries around the world borrow. It makes sense for Uganda to borrow to do now what we shouldn't have otherwise been able to do now what we could have deferred to 3 decades later. But what matters is that at what terms are we borrowing? Now, I know that Uganda's focus is now on borrowing on concessionary terms. And when you borrow, the next thing is, just like any other business, when you borrow, are you putting those monies to good use? That's the question we should be asking. If you're a business in Uganda and you borrow from any bank and you take to building a house, as opposed to injecting that capital in your business, you'll be having issues very, very fast. Same with countries. Then on coordination of government communications, you remember, I see Linda Nabsai here, the president's former press secretary. I remember back then, I think the challenge we are facing now as a country is leakage of letters. What we used to do back then is craft out what the directive is, craft out what the message is, and issue a statement. And I'm sure New Vision and Daily Monitor, as well as Chimp Reports, will bear witness. But now, everybody who receives letters, government actors, simply share letters as they are on social media, and the consumers will not understand the context of such meetings, of the background. So you can imagine how much it fuels negativity around the country. But on a positive note, you know that there was a time government did not have a presence on digital. When we chaired the business forum that was held on the margins of NAM, I noticed the collaborations between the Ministry of ICT and all the agencies and all the other government, GCIC, Ministry of Tourism. I think that is fantastic, and I wish you well. Please keep it up. My last is yeah, I've spoken about leakage of letters. My last, because somebody asked, I think it was Akelo, and spy. They asked if a tourist has died and they have actually died, why don't we state that the tourists have died? I think we really need to agree that we have a country that we call home. The only country we call home is what? Uganda. If things fall apart in Uganda, each one of us will be what? Affected. So this is what soft power does. When the tourism got lost in the jungles, we published a headline, tourism sites remain safe, security liaises to find the missing tourist. If you say the tourist is dead and the vehicles are getting burnt, you put the entire country on fire. But of course your concerns are valid. If indeed, after this fantastic search by our great forces leads to a confirmation that a tourist has actually died, that's when our government actors in Ministry of Foreign Affairs, in the spokesperson or Minister of ICT, will now take the matters. No, please listen, because you see, for me, actually, Barbara was right. I can see two perspectives in this room. A perspective of the strategic communicators and the perspective of a media, a digital news outlet focused on running away with the stories, generate traffic to those stories. And you recall I told you earlier that I'm still struggling to date at Soft Power. My team will say, please allow us to publish all these stories, but I won't. Fortunately, they have come around, and indeed Soft Power has grown on the basis of positive stories. But what we therefore need to do as a country is be on the offensive. And before Andrew cut me short, I was just about to say that,
because I was about to cut you short myself.
Give me 1 minute, please. That when you get to that point and the tourist has actually been found dead, the conversation then goes offline. Our government actors in diplomacy, our spokesperson will then engage the family of the tourist empathetically, and that too should be communicated. The other one, Honorable Minister and good people, when we grew up, there was something called Ubuntu. I'm sure each of our languages and dialects have Ubuntu. Whenever I attend an engagement these days to be taken through soft skills, you know what the soft skills are? Do communicate this way, do not talk at each other, foster teamwork. Was this not our Ubuntu? I recall many years ago that we were always told that when you're speaking, yogeza akawowo, yogeza akawowo. Speak in a manner that does not disenchant the receiver of your message. So just like our senior Barbara said, the matters we are discussing here today will require a multi-pronged approach. I remember back then in school in Namagunga, we had social graces, so we'll have to go back to our schools, foster social graces. But also my last one is to encourage government, even if I don't speak again, that our constitution provides for dissent. That online dissent is not illegitimate. It's actually legitimate. What matters is how you respond. Engage the online dissenters, take their feedback, but above all, act on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Alex, pass the microphone to Alex. You.
Thank you, Charles. I think there was a question from Lam Anthony from the Uganda Catholic Television about lack of centralized authority when it comes to journalism and journalism practice. I think that has to do with, I think there is a historical resistance to regulation in this country because of maybe how the laws were introduced, specifically the Press and Journalism Act of 1995. Maybe we need to come together as industry players, as regulators, as other stakeholders, and agree that regulation is good, and then also agree on what kind of regulation do we want. But I'm afraid that when these initiatives come, the politicians will hijack, for example, the legal processes, and then seek to introduce laws to punish people, and then we shall go back to square one. But we need to agree that regulation is good, and then also agree on what kind of regulation we need. And then lastly, I will say that the media will not be responsible for a bad image of the country, because the media will always, in theory and in practice, will always act in public interest. If we do not fix what the public interest issues, and then there's no point in trying to point fingers at the media.
Thank you. Giles?
Thank you very much. I'm going to summarize. The issue of wind has triggered some emotions here. But what I see with other countries like United States, when there's a shooting at a school, what happens? What I would call an area DPC immediately calls a press conference, provides accurate information about the attack, and explains the measures that authorities are taking to protect the school, to counsel families that have been affected, and also protect other schools. So instead of trying to cover up or spin or trying to project a good image, it's better that when something happens, it's reported accurately. Because me, I was leaving campus and I was about to drive. Then I saw pictures of the tourists who were killed. And what happens? They were over. They were viral. So even if you say the tourist is missing, people will already have seen the truth. They will see you as covering up. Lastly, on the lack of coordination in government agencies, I see in US and North America and Europe, what they do is they have digital platforms to measure the performance of their government communicators from all over the country. So these people have key performance indicators, and they're held against them. So they monitor them. Even Honorable Chris can have a dashboard in your office, and you see who is performing, who is not performing, who is letting us down, and that centralized coordination. So I think our government needs to adopt those best practices in managing the flow of its strategic communications. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much to the panel. Someone wrote in. Someone wrote in a comment here and sent it over and said, "Strange that we care how we project ourselves to the outside world and care less about our deeds. We need to put our house in order." And that came from somebody in the audience. Yes, Barbara?
I'm sorry. Just one thing that I thought I needed to talk about. I talked about a social media army, but not talk about the pool for content. And I'm not putting this responsibility on the media houses, though you can work with the media houses, but there must be a pool where content that we want to popularize can be gotten from. And the pool can be open to anybody, whether it is a social media person, a legacy media, or your own communicators. but there must be a pool of content. That pool of content can be produced by legacy media houses, by people you have employed, by whatever, but there must be a pool for whatever strategy. So if the strategy is now we are going to be talking about budget, there must be a pool. If there's going to be something, because with social media, you see in the past, that was not necessary. Because my media house, I would be able to regulate what goes out, what doesn't go out. Now, in this case, you're working with people who are producing media every time. They want to be the first. These young people would like to come to a pool and know that I can get an image of so and so saying this, the other person doing that, because for them it's about trending. So if it is well done, there must be a pool as you think of the strategy.
Thank you. Can we give a big round of applause to our panelists, Barbara, Sarah, Alex, and Giles? Thank you very much. As I invite the next person to speak, I want to put a question to Moses. Why are some of these government strategies not working? When the media center was set up, it was to coordinate government communication. GCIC was set up to sieve through the data, the facts, and project that. Give the facts. So if you have a dispute over numbers for date, should be able to go through those numbers and give you different sources. What does World Bank say, IMF say, government ministry say, and where is the dispute coming from? How effective are those working? Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to invite Mr. Pius Mwanganiza from the Media Council. Come and speak to us. Minister of ICT. My apologies, sir.
Thank you very much, Charles. Honorable Minister, I happen to be an active player in the media. You can see they put me in Media Council as the former secretary of Media Council. So maybe you bet on the disciplinary committee and he has not forgotten this guy who gave him trouble. But quickly, now I'm a principal communication officer in the Ministry of ICT, and I work with the Honorable Minister in the same ministry we are at, the Ministry of ICT. And as we come to this, first of all, I want us to look at a bit of a way forward which we are going to capture. Essentially, many questions we are saying, what are we about? What is all this about? And we're saying, what are we coming about? What is the outcome out of this? First of all, we want to see how can the media influence policy. Because we have a head of, basically our sector, our policy head is here. And government, who leads government? Because society has to be organized. And we organized by the government. And who is the government? Of course, each one is a government, but there are some certain people who play certain roles. So quickly, I wanted us to look at some of the areas, pointers which were raised, and we allocate issues of who is responsible for what. And I can explain a little bit why. One of the challenges where I can see from National Broadcasting Association, they're saying about budget and financing. Communication has been difficult to make something to measure in terms of, if you go to economists and planners, they say, what's your output? How do we measure your impact? How do we measure all these issues? And then you end up with the low budget. And I'm sure this is one of the biggest challenges we've been having. But we are kind of on a move, or kind of a policy move direction, new policy approach we are trying to use. And that's why we're going to use a bit, I hope they can project something for me, some kind of a matrix, quickly to guide us quickly. So with pointers, we pick one at a time. Can we have that projected? As they're doing the projection, quickly is to understand that, first of all, it's all of us here to appreciate here that we are all in the same boat. Some people are saying there are 2 perspectives, 3 perspectives, but essentially we are all in the same boat. We are all in the same economy, in the global economy. And the question is, if we sink together. That's the first starting point. And it brings me back to what was raised after. Someone talked about public interest. Essentially, Alex, I think, all this that we are doing is basically about public interest. If we say, in a global economy, that you continue to shrink if you don't have an identity, you don't have an image, and nobody is selling you. Because in a global village, everybody, it depends on how you stand and what you project and what you sell. So we have to be very actively knowing that we have to secure ourselves. And also, I think my namesake Pius talked about power. This power play is at a high level. It's not only the power in terms of politics, but media is one of the power centers in terms of power control. So briefly, I wanted to highlight some issues which are raised, and maybe allocate them, because this the engagement dialogue has been focusing on trade, tourism. And we wanted to see some, quickly, I hope the rapporteur is following. Just quickly, I'll cite some. If I miss some, you can raise them. But I was listening through all this. Another minister, I'll maybe start with the Minister of ICT. One of the issues was raised about service delivery. And in terms of policy, you have a subcommittee in terms of communication and a subcommittee of cabinet. It means you have all the ministers of all sectors under your call. Maybe you need to give us a promise of an action that what are you going to do for this sector of the media in terms of engaging those policy leaders of those sectors in terms of service delivery. Because this is what essentially what we project, the image of what we are. Ministries do something. And when they do, they should be able to tell us what they are doing. So maybe the rapporteur can take, we put service delivery under Ministry of ICT, and we want to see what cabinet is going to do for us, the subcommittee on communication. Do you meet quarterly? Are you going to do monthly? We want to see what you can actually say, because essentially we want to see how media can also contribute to policy. Are we together? There's some silence in the room. It means you have been going all this way, but now you're going back to strategy. Okay. Okay, quickly. Okay, maybe I just point, maybe in service delivery, Minister of ICT is going to hand a bit on that issue. We are going to do a program with Commissioner Watasa to see what we can do in terms of engaging the service delivery, the ministries, how they coordinate with the communication in terms of the leader of communication of government. And also the issue of the vision and values. That was raised. Also, we put it under Minister of ICT. Basically, the matrix is saying why the two overlap, media and ICT. That's what we want to see the action. I hope the rapporteur is following on that. And then there's an issue of adapting, and I think it was by Giles. This brings up the issue of three issues. One was to do with the platforms, and also what I think Barbara Kaija raised about the pool content and all this. We have to adapt on how we store the information. That's also another action area for ICT, and also to work with these all ministries are particular in those two slots. If you can put an X on that item, it can be important for us to follow up after here. Maybe we can also put, maybe in the next 6 months, we can want to see an output in this. And also to do with the information sources. Who is responsible to make sure the quality of information where we are generating is coming from? I see tourism here, I see trade. So, how are your information sources about your subject matter? These people are talking about how do you manage even the information flow? If an event has happened, how do you manage the information that is released? An event has happened, how do you manage it to the public? That's another action point for those three agencies. And the issue of coordination was raised. Coordination, thank you very much, Sarah, for that, saying that we have actually learned from that. And Honorable Minister to report, this event was done in a very short time. But we really thank the different agencies that came together, GCIC, Media Center, UBC, the National Broadcaster, the ministry. We quickly managed to do something. It was not an easy, because your engagements were very many, you couldn't get your time, but we're happy that you managed to make it. But this has to be extended. Maybe this brings me back to also what was raised about the dialogues. Should we make this periodic? And maybe today we are focusing on trade and tourism. Next time we talk about public health or something, so that you can actually follow actions on those areas, call them to do action on that. Not so. I hope, Barbara, now you're feeling happy that actually there's something going to come out of this talking. That's what my role is right now. Also, and then there was an issue of collaboration. But in all these I'm mentioning, I know that the national broadcaster also has a key role, because it should be built, given the capacity to drive those pertinent issues that actually are important for all the, our source of information should be, a national broadcaster should actually be guiding in case of anything. So I need the rapporteur to take note of that. And also in the terms of source of information, we have to consider the local governments and the public. What are we building down there? What kind of information are we building? And on the collaboration, I think it was raised by Commissioner Watasa in his presentation. How do we collaborative work we are doing together as agencies, media and the government? This one brings us to what are we doing? Can we commit something like do reports, to research together, surveys, when we have those annual publications about the subject matter, so that we can actually have factual information? Not so. That's what I was hearing. And also I think it was Giles who mentioned the issue of analytics. data analytics. Maybe we need to do a joint together in a collaborative way. How do we analyze this data and how are we collecting it? Because the data that actually statistics has is different from the data maybe you need. The media we use. Media is our input. It's the output, but it's our input. So we also analyze it at a different level. Not so? Okay. And then the issue of identity. The identity, somebody was raising an issue of identity. How do we maintain our identity? Does this go with values? It's linked. I'm asking Pius who raised the matter. So we put our identity to do with values. National guidance, I hope the commission, I saw the principal communication, national guidance officer here. So you need to take note of this, but also the rapporteur, please take note of that. And with that, Honourable Minister, I hope if there's something I've raised, you would like to raise, and the public, you can point it out, and quickly I close this part of the way forward. And any area you feel that you should capture in this matrix for action, for follow-up, yes, please. This, for my part, is just very precise. It's not going to give narratives. Okay, quickly.
I was supposed to say this in the previous panel, but still I'm seeing the same loophole is here. The issue of the environment. The media does not cover a lot about issues of the environment. And as you've seen, the current challenge of people being removed from the wetlands and the existing law concerning the wetlands, but people are still refusing to leave, saying they have rights that come with that, and the media has for a long time not reported accurately about the environment. For example, in today's New Vision, it's saying that over 1,200 land titles are going to be removed by NEMA, yet that is a responsibility of the Ministry of Lands. There's no way it comes into issues of the land. So I think the issues of the environment and where the world is going globally, that is something that we need to focus on, sustainable development. I think even Sarah must have hit on it while she was on the panel. Unfortunately, it has been neglected. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Maybe we can capture it at this level. Commissioner Watasa, ICT, you can, when you're doing the periodic, we can actually put those items. Now we are dealing with the trade and tourism. Next time we can propose tourism, environment, and other sectors. So I'd like to thank you all for listening to me, and I'd like to invite Commissioner Watasa to invite the Honourable.
Okay, friends, happy to be back here again. I want to thank you so much, friends, for your time and for being so generous and for the inspiring ideas that you shared with us. We've noted this. Pius couldn't state everything because we are going to produce a detailed report. We spoke about, Barbara, you spoke about salt clearance from Honourable Minister, about another session where we can dig deeper into some of these things. Joe Walker, you also raised that. Honourable Minister agrees, and I think let's clap for him for endorsing our proposals. You talked about centers, Charles, not working. The centers are working, as the testimony from our good friend Sarah, G77 and NAM. They worked, but we are never complacent, Charles. We are always agile and willing to learn and open to new ways so that we can even do better. All of us are here. Marcella is here from GCIC, Media Center is here, UBC is here, Media Council is here, as you heard earlier, all under the policy and the political direction and supervision of Honourable Minister, who is here, and who I am aware is supposed to be somewhere else. But you can see he has given us his time. Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Minister, I'm seeking your indulgence to temporarily mutate into the PS so that I can take the honor to invite you to talk to us, inspire us as you normally do, so that we can, after that, have a group photo with you, Honorable Minister, and then the rest of the team can break for lunch. I suppose you may not have the time to join us for lunch, but we do appreciate your time, sir. Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much. Acting PS, sometimes acting means active. Thank you very much, Commissioner Watasa, and all of you distinguished participants. I apologize, I should have started with you from the beginning, but I was engaged somewhere and I had to cut short my participation there, come here, rushing for something else at 1. But I'm happy that I came when the conversation was on, and I was able to pick some of the issues which we're raising, and also the rapporteuring team has also been capturing the issues. Let me start by answering a question. Somebody said, is it because the end of the financial year and you are trying to exhaust the budget? No. No. There have been concerns from various partners, including the cabinet, about the work of the media. And therefore, we scheduled to have this engagement. And I think from the discussion, we are going to have many more engagements so that we understand each other and be able to continue to do a good work in cross partnership. And therefore, it's not because we are trying to exhaust the budget because the financial year is ending, but because we thought an engagement between our ministry and you, the media actors, is extremely important. In any case, we don't have a budget, that we have a balance as the year ends. Let me start by thanking the media generally for the good work that you do in Uganda. And you can clap for it. Because I could as well have started by admonishing you, but you are doing a very good job in Uganda, the media. And the media is part and parcel of what Uganda is today. So we cannot wish you away. You are part of society. I also want to thank the Department of Communication, headed by our Commissioner Watasa, for organizing this engagement, and appreciate all of you who have spared time to come and be here, because today is Tuesday, it's a working day. Maybe you had other engagements, but you spared time and you are here since morning. So I want to say thank you very much. As you all know, the media landscape has expanded over the years, with print media, electronic media, online media, social media, digital platforms, a plethora of different platforms. And therefore, regulation and coordination become extremely important, because we are a country governed by law, governed by order. If you just allow all the media houses to function the way they want, then you might end up with chaos. And therefore, I appreciate the point which someone raised, the issue of regulation. And I'm sure all of us appreciate the need to be coordinated, the need to regulate the media, the need to move much more smoothly in a harmonized way, other than just leaving everybody and anybody do whatever he or she wants, and then you just have a chaotic society. And the social media has also come in to disrupt many things. I see some of you, the mainstream media, also being driven by social media. I have seen newspapers, you make headlines, what you have seen on social media, and sometimes it is false. I don't want to name which newspaper. I have seen television airing news, just airing what you have seen on social media, and sometimes it turns out not even accurate, being accurate, because social media has promoted citizen journalism, where anybody now can just go on a phone and publish anything, and it goes. And that speaks to necessity for stronger regulation of the media, including the social media, because at least the print media, the broadcast media, it is, you have editors who go through stories before they are published. But with social media, anything goes. Now, you spoke about how government coordinates communication. Yes, we have taken note of the concerns that you are raising. I think you are raising questions, you are giving pieces of advice, and we have taken note of all the proposals and your concerns. And as a ministry, we shall definitely try to continue to improve. But government, of course, the Minister of Information, we are at the apex, and the way we have arranged, every ministry and agency has a spokesperson. And also in the local governments, we have district information officers all over the country who are supposed to be able to inform the country in their specific areas, but with the ministry providing overall guidance. And of course, the Uganda Media Center is under the Ministry of Information. But we take note of the concerns you are raising, and we shall continue to strive to improve the way we manage coordination. Yes, sometimes an agency may air out information, like police. I think we were discussing it here. When the suspected ADF killed journalists in Katwe Kabatoro, Kasese, immediately the pictures, somebody took pictures, and I think also police tweeted them. Then again, we're getting calls from the tourism sector. Now, what is this? So we need to continue having an honest conversation on how we can manage some of those situations. And that's why we organize this kind of engagement with the people from Ministry of Trade, people from tourism, to see how best we can handle some of these communications. As a ministry, we've been drafting a comprehensive communication policy and also a national guidance policy, as well as an overarching Communications Act. I hope you've been part of the consultations so that we inform some of these key documents, which we are actually concluding, because I found the work already ongoing in the ministry. The communications policy, the national guidance policy. Somebody will say, what is national guidance? All these are clearly articulated in that policy document. Commissioner Watasa, I will now put the challenge to you that some of these documents, definitely the media fraternity should be part of the partners that should make a contribution before we conclude some of these key important policy documents. As well as we are collapsing all the communication-related laws into one law. Because we have the UCC Act, we have the UBC Act of 2005, we have the Press and Journalists Act, we have the Computer Misuse Act. We are bringing all these together into one law, and there is a process going on. I'm sure at some point we may invite you to engage so that you make an input. Maybe what are the concerns regarding this discussion? Somebody was saying, is the government saying you should tell lies? No. Nobody is saying you should lie. Although sometimes you lie, but nobody's saying you should lie to polish the image of government. Nobody is saying that. But we are saying if the Minister of Information has come and has been here, report so that he has come. Don't say he didn't come. Now, the issue is that we would want you to be accurate and to be factual. I always challenge Monitor. Their theme is truth always. And I will ask them, are you sure you are telling the truth always? So we want you to be accurate, to be factual, but the issue of patriotism is maybe where we are centering this discussion on. Patriotism, in simple terms, means love for your country. I lived in the US for some time in the early 2000s. There are states, there is a state towards Canada. They are so poor that many houses have rats in the homes. So poor you cannot believe it is America. But you'll never see the American press airing it out. When I was the Minister of State for Housing, we were taken to Germany to look at the homeless, people who have no homes and they live on the streets and they are in very dire situations. But you'll never see the German media airing it out. For you, sitting here, you will think Germany is heaven. But it's the other part of Germany which you will never see outside. And that's the point we are driving. Yes, we're not saying we gag you or you falsify information, but how do you package your message? You give out the message, but without damaging the image of the country, you being a Ugandan. I think that's the question that we are grappling with. For instance, I think that example had been given where towards Chogam, I think there was a New Vision, Barbara, which said Kampala water is full of feces. So what are you trying to say? That we run away and we don't take the water? Or people should not come here to take the water? And that one raises two issues. The first one is the issue of patriotic reporting, but also the other one is whether you actually know what you are reporting. Because I think you also have a challenge of translating scientific information into stories. The other day there was a report about aflatoxins. You just hear scientists from Makerere make a presentation about his research. And then for us who are scientists, when we read the story, you say, this journalist never understood what the professor was presenting. You see just some observations from the researcher, then you generalize. All the grains in Uganda have toxins. Whereas actually the findings do not mean that. Or like that issue of feces, maybe they have tested some water sample from somewhere and find some bacteria. There's a bacteria called the Escherichia coli. They just report that and say that one is usually transmitted through stools. And then for you generalize, you say all the water has feces. So two elements, the patriotic aspect, but also the knowledge, the ability to understand what you are reporting are those issues. I heard somebody ask you, and how do you want to leave people in Kampala to consume that water and they get diseased? But by reporting as a headline, have you solved the issue? Why wouldn't you give that information to Minister of Health? If you are patriotic, you'd want the issue handled. Why wouldn't you give it to Minister of Health and maybe cross-check and so many other countries, they will report, but they will have that patriotic spirit. That we report, we give information, but we wouldn't want to damage our country. Because we are like saying, we would want to attract tourists to Uganda to earn income. We would want investors to come and invest here. We would want export business and trade to boom. And all of those are beneficial to Uganda as a country, irrespective of whatever makes us different, but we are Ugandans. So you as a journalist, you as a media practitioner, how do you do your work of reporting, but mindful of the fact that you wouldn't want to damage the image of Uganda? That's a question that we are grappling with. And as agreed, I think we shall have many more engagements and see how best we can work together. But nobody is saying you should tell lies, you should falsify. No, nobody is saying that. Yes, report accurately. Like when I came in, if they said, all of you report a story, how the minister came in, you will see different ways how you have reported it. You will be, minister came late. Another will say, the minister came and spoke very well. Another will say, the minister came, he was quiet, he listened attentively. So it depends how you package the information. And now if you say the minister came late, it will go out negative. Say, what kind of minister is this? He's meeting his journalist, now he comes late. But somebody responsible could say, he came late, but he told us he had another engagement. And he was actually even rushing to have another meeting. So meaning he's a very busy and active minister. So it depends on how you package it. You can choose to make it negative so that you create bias among the readers, or yes, you say he came late, but he explained why he came late and so forth. So that's the point we are making. But the others who will say he never came at all, our Ugandan journalists, our Ugandan media, there will be those who say, I never saw him, he never came. So that's the kind of patriotism that we talk about. And when you look at the media, you have repeatedly heard the president, for instance, describe the Monitor. Is it here? The Monitor, our friends from the Monitor, as an enemy of Uganda, of government, of the state. Because some media houses, at least to us who are out there, come out as if their editorial policy is anti-establishment. Is anti-establishment. You see, like the other time when the president invited members of cabinet and the Central Executive Committee to go to Kisozi. And now, one person during the conversation said for him he had not benefited from the support of the president. Then they explained that this man has just migrated into the village, but he will benefit in the second round. But the Monitor chose to say people in Chisos have rejected the president's program. Now when I inquired, the journalist who wrote was not even there. He just got information from a third party. So that borders on irresponsibility. I said, what happened? He said, no, we waited for him, but he delayed, so the bus left him. So he never came to Chisozi. But I think somebody narrated to him what happened. And of all things, he chose to pick one person who complained that he hadn't benefited. And an explanation was given by the leader that he's a new migrant there, and he's scheduled to benefit from another phase. And yet there are very many good things which had happened there. So what do you call that one? Eh? No, some bias. So some of you have editorial bias. Some media houses sometimes appear like as if they are partisan, or they have a partisan position in our politics. And yet we would want you to be neutral. We're not saying you should be NRM, but neither should you be opposition. Just be the media. But I think a number of media houses are failing the test. We get hosted on media talk shows, and I'm not meaning Charles, because Charles is one of the people hosting me. But sometimes you find you are there as a government, and you are with the opposition. Then the moderator gets swayed, and eventually his political colors come out as he moderates. Either he becomes too pro-NRM, you see this man is just a government man, or opposition. Yet, as a moderator, I think you should not show your side. You should just put the questions to us who are debating. So, even you as media people, you need a lot of training, I think, training as we navigate through this kind of work. And lastly, I think somebody raised the issue of welfare. It is extremely pertinent because, one, we don't have a minimum wage here in Uganda. And in most of the media houses are private sector owned. And NAB is here. I've always been engaging in NAB. That many journalists, media practitioners are poorly paid. The other day when we were giving food to people affected by lockdown, the first group which came to us were the media practitioners. Yes, they came to me because I was active. I was not yet Minister of ICT, but I was actively involved. And they said, some of us are paid per story. And we get stories from events. But the events are no more because there's a lockdown. So we cannot survive. It's the reality. They are paid if they are lucky. You post a story, if the story is published, you are paid. But in some cases, even it will be published and your pay will not be there or it will delay. So they came genuinely to say that's the environment in which we work and the lockdown is severely hitting us. That's the reality. So many of our young people especially, the journalists, are not paid well by the media owners. But also it goes to what somebody raised that when we opened up the space and we have 320 radio stations, didn't we open too much? Can our economy hold those many radios? Because I can tell you, many of the radio stations are struggling financially. You will find many of them are probably owned by politicians, and the only service they provide is a platform for the politician to talk to the people. But in terms of financials, probably they are having challenges. And it translates into, first of all, recruiting people who are not trained, and then paying them poorly, and it affects the quality of the service that the media gives us. So we have that huge challenge, and if you have a media practitioner who is poorly paid or not paid at all, then I can pay him to write to publish what I want. And this is what happens now, like the campaign season is coming in. A candidate who has money will just sponsor somebody to air out a story, whether false or accurate, as long as the other person has paid this young reporter. Those are issues which we must address and see how to clean the whole profession so that we can coexist, government and you, the media practitioners. But nobody is against the media. We're only saying, let's work together. Let's have platforms where these challenges can be discussed. You are raising the issues of the budget. How do we support you? When we have resources, we do support you. Like during COVID, I think government gave support to media houses. The other time I was being confronted at the media center when UCC said you must air the message of the president on the census. I said, but the census is planned for 10 years. Why didn't you include the budget for those kind of announcements? These are issues we shall continue to engage with you. We have no problem supporting you when the resources are available. Now, since we have agreed that we shall have many more engagements, let me just pause my remarks